Okay, welcome to the Kayvman Show, episode 13, and we're picking up where we left off. We're talking about training. In the last episode, we spoke a little bit about intensity, the intensity principle, and that means that you want a high level of intensity, as high level of intensity as possible, the highest stimulus on your body as you can safely do and smartly do. The other side of that coin is consistency. So intensity is a very short-term principle. It's within each workout. You want as high intensity possible within each workout. Consistency is over the long term. So it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum where you're thinking long term, and actually that is more of a marathon, not a sprint. So you sprint with intensity and then you think about the long term, you go steady with consistency. The reason why I say it's opposite is you have to make sure that you don't burn yourself out. With your fitness regime, you have to make sure that you are consistent. Doing 5 sessions a week or 6 sessions a week of something and then skipping a week is not consistency. That's the opposite of consistency. I think it's better for people to do 2 sessions. Let's use weight training as an example because it's the most common example and probably the most efficient way to get fitness results. And we'll speak about specifically what types of training to do in future episodes. But for now, we'll use weight training as an example. 2 weight training sessions per week of sufficient intensity done for 12 weeks is going to get you much better results than 5 training sessions per week for 3 weeks and then taking 2 weeks off, getting sick, getting injured, just not feeling it, just not having the time. So the biggest problem that I see with people is that they think they need to do so much for their fitness that it's this kind of all or nothing mentality. They don't realize that 2 half-an-hour sessions a week, which is what I do with many of my clients with great success, can be so effective, and therefore they end up giving up on their fitness regime completely. And it's this kind of all or nothing, black and white mentality, and that's completely the wrong approach. My approach is a minimalist approach, meaning do whatever the minimum is for you to get your stimulus, for you to get your fitness in, but be really super consistent. Do not miss a week. If you miss a day, make it up, right? Most people fail in their fitness regimes. I'll say this straight up. Most people fail in their fitness goals because they're not consistent. Anyone who sticks with it, or 90% of people who stick with it and stay in the game for long enough, will succeed eventually, right? It's not so much a question of know-how, at least with regard to training. I think with nutrition, people don't know what to eat. With training, I don't think that people are training wrong per se so often as, some people are, but so often as people just fall apart. They either give up, they sabotage themselves, or they don't have the time, or whatever. They make excuses, but they're not consistent with it long term. And being consistent long term is the key. It's the golden key to training. I think that some of the biggest impediments to consistency are training too much, training too often. Something I see is injuries. People get injured a lot, which actually is part of training too much and too often, overtraining. So I'll speak about 2 things today. One is setting up the training wrong, overtraining essentially, and that leads to kind of burnout in the form of injuries, in the form of emotional burnout, in the form of getting sick, in the form of just life happening and not having the time because of the kids, because of work, blah, blah, blah. Those are all excuses. People make excuses all the time, okay? There is no excuse not to be in shape. There is none. So if you're listening to this and you're kind of thinking, well, I have an excuse, take it, throw it out the window for now. The biggest reason people are not able to stick with their training regime is because they've set it up wrong. They are overtraining because they want results quickly, and they vastly overestimate how much results they can get in the short term, and they vastly underestimate how much results they can get in the long term. So the key is to switch to long-term thinking. Think long-term, have a long-term vision. If you have a long-term vision, then if you have a bad week or whatever, or things don't work, it's not that big a deal. Okay. Think in terms of 6-month projects, 3 to 6 month projects. That's what I would tell you. Whenever you start out on a fitness project, think about the long-term vision that you're looking for. Okay. Don't just go into it. Think about what you want to achieve. Have it be something emotional. Have it be something you would love, right? Something that you would really enjoy having. What could you achieve in 6 months? And that might require that you go to a professional and have the professional, like a trainer or a coach or whatever, tell you what is a good 6-month goal. But find your 6-month goal, something that you emotionally buy into. Okay. It's really important that you emotionally buy into it, right? That's vision. That's different from just a goal. The goal will come from the vision, but the vision is something that you really desire, you're really hungry for, and it's something that speaks to your heart. If you do not have an emotional buy-in to your long-term goal, you will not have consistency. You will not stay the course. You will give up. There will be challenges. You will get sick. You will probably get hurt. Things will happen. Shit will happen. Okay? Guaranteed. You will not surmount these challenges unless you have an emotional buy-in to your vision, to your long-term project. Okay? And from there, you can have kind of mini goals along the way, whatever that is, like a strength goal or a fat loss goal or just a lifestyle goal. For some people, it's like to be able to hike, right? To be able to hike this thing, or to be able to take the stairs, or, if you're elderly, like to be able to get off the floor by yourself. That's actually one of the biggest predictors of your mortality, is how long are you going to be able to get up off the floor and get back down on the floor without help from someone or a walk. Anyway, besides the point. But yeah, really important that you have an emotional buy-in to your long-term goal, right? That is the key to consistency. If you do not have an emotional, if it's just something in your head, like, oh, it would be cool to be able to blah, 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 you won't have the consistency. You'll give up. Okay. Realistically, you're going to give up. Most people do. And that is the problem, is that people fall out of the game. They don't stay in the game long enough. So if there's an actionable piece of advice from today, it's make sure you're consistent. The other part is not having the kind of emotional buy-in, right? And the vision. That's the one part of consistency that people fail. And the second part is overtraining, just training too hard in the short term. And again, not valuing long term, like not thinking long term. Consistency is something that you do long term. This is the marathon part of fitness. Intensity in each individual workout, where you go balls to the walls, all out, that is a sprint. So it's a series of sprints. But over the long term, it's a marathon, right? You're thinking long term with a marathon. Now, going back to this marathon analogy, how are you going to stay in the game? One element is having that emotional buy-in. And then the other element is not burning yourself out and remaining in the long term, like thinking about your long-term vision. And that's why I personally recommend no more than 45-minute sessions, especially if we're talking about weight training, right? If we're talking about skill development in another thing, if it's soccer or MMA, or you're, again, a runner, ultra marathon runner, you might need longer sessions. But essentially, what I mean is be minimalist. So with regard to weight training, I do 2 or 3 weight training sessions with my clients for half an hour a week. Okay, so an hour and a half of training a week. That might not be specifically good for you, but keep in mind minimalism. Okay, be minimalist. Only do what you need to do and then get out of there, right? Go hard and go home, because that will keep your intensity sufficiently high, and it will also, in the long term, allow your recovery to be sufficiently high. And that's physical recovery, it's mental recovery, it's everything, right? If you are overtraining, your body will kind of break down on you in some way, whether it's an injury or a sickness or just not being into it anymore, right? And your emotions, vulnerable to overtraining. So you'll have this kind of burnout. So make sure you don't overtrain. And the way you don't overtrain is you just be minimalist. Now, it's hard for me to tell you through a podcast exactly what minimalism will look like to you, but you have to bear in mind, and this is why you might want to hire a coach. But if you want to do this on your own, Just bear in mind exactly what do I want to achieve in these sessions, and get rid of all the fluff. Get rid of all the extra stuff. Like cardio, for example. People are starting to catch on to the fact that cardio is not what all, and there's definitely a limit of how much cardio. Even I've trained ultra marathon runners, right? And there was a limitation on how much cardio they do, right? They had to be very careful about overtraining and prioritizing not just the training part, but the recovery part, thinking about getting out the gym, relaxing when you're out of the gym, making sure you're sleeping enough. These are all facets of minimalism and avoiding overtraining that will keep you consistent in the long term. Okay, so I'm going to reiterate these 2 points of consistency. There's two main points of consistency, just so that you have something really crystallized for you. One point of consistency is having a long term goal, having a long term vision, and having a buy in to that long term vision and remaining there, emotionally putting yourself in that place. What do I want? What do I desire? What speaks to my heart, right? What do I really, really want? And I advise around 6 months, but again, that's flexible. Having your emotional buy in, right? Your vision, okay? That's one side. You need that. Other side is minimalism. Okay, not overtraining. Do what is necessary and get rid of the fluff. Prioritize not just being in the gym, but getting out of the gym. Prioritize not just training, but recovery. And that will avoid overtraining. You want to be really ruthless with this, with whatever your training regime is. Be really ruthless. Get rid of the fluff. Do what you need to do, and then get out of the gym. And remember, you're not going to achieve results in a day. You're going to achieve results in months, especially with regard to muscle gain and fat loss, right? Those are slow things. People are really confused about this. Fat loss, you don't lose more than 2 pounds of fat a week. It doesn't happen. If you lost 10 pounds, right, then that might be in a couple of weeks, right? I've seen it happen with my clients. It happens all the time. But a lot of that is not going to be fat loss. A lot of that might be water weight loss, like lowered inflammation. There's all sorts of other parts of your body that you can lose apart from fat. Why am I saying this? Don't look for a quick fix. Maybe you need a quick fix to get a jump start to get you going. That happens. Like I have clients do a sort of 10-day or 2-week trial of a diet to see how their body reacts. But you're not going to achieve anything crazy in 2 weeks. You're going to achieve enough that you know, oh, this is working, and then to move in that direction. So sometimes you do need a kind of extreme jump start, like a detox to get you going. But again, the long term is important. Fat loss is slow. Same thing with muscle gain. Muscle gain is even slower. Unless you're taking juice, there's no way you're putting 20 pounds of muscle on in a year. Unless you're a teenager and you've never trained before, or you're taking steroids, you're not putting 20 pounds of muscle on in a year, right? Maybe 10. 10's great. If you can get 10 pounds of muscle on, depending on your size, in a year, fantastic. But this idea that like you have to kind of lower your expectations a little bit and be patient. It will happen. All of these things are happening. You can do anything with your body. The sky is the limit. But be patient, be consistent, and think about the long term. Okay, that's what I'm going to leave you with. And we will pick back up, continuing our conversation about training in the next episode. Okay, peace.